My wife secretly sold our family home without telling me, dividing $350, $0, and hiding the proceeds, then cheated me out of my rightful share in a bitter court battle over the property and inheritance. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation where my wife would turn out to be the biggest liar and cheater I've ever known. We had a good life, or at least I thought we did. Married for 10 years, 2 kids, a nice house, decent jobs. But all that changed in a matter of days when I stumbled upon something that shattered my world. It started with little things, missed calls, secretive texts, her disappearing into the bedroom with her phone. At first I brushed it off. Everyone has secrets, right? But then I noticed her behavior getting worse. She'd come home late, smell like perfume I didn't recognize, and she'd get defensive whenever I asked where she'd been. One night I decided to follow her. I had a gut feeling, a terrible suspicion that she was hiding something. She told me she was going out with her friends, but I knew better. I watched her get into a sleek black car she'd never driven before, and I followed at a distance. She pulled into a hotel parking lot. My stomach dropped. I parked a few blocks away and waited, heart pounding. I saw her slip inside with a guy I'd never seen before. They stayed in there for about an hour. When she came out, her makeup was smudged and she looked exhausted but oddly satisfied. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what I saw. I couldn't believe my wife, the woman I trusted with my life, was cheating on me. But what made it worse was the way she lied about everything. She'd deny it if I confronted her, call me paranoid or insecure. She'd swear she loved me, that I was overreacting, that I was imagining things. But I knew better. The evidence was staring me in the face. The next day I decided to dig deeper. I installed a keylogger on her phone, something I'd never thought I'd do, but I was desperate. I wanted to see what she was hiding, and sure enough, it didn't take long. I started seeing texts from a guy named Jake, talking about meeting up, secrets, and hot sex. There were pictures too, her in bed with him, her lips pressed against his neck. It was sickening. How could she do this to me, to our family? All those years I worked hard to give us a good life, and she was out there screwing around with some guy she met online. I felt betrayed, furious, and heartbroken all at once. I wanted to confront her right then, but I knew I needed a plan. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I needed proof, and I needed to get ahead of her before she destroyed everything we built. That's when I started thinking about what she'd done with the house, the money, everything. The house was supposed to be our dream home, but I found out she'd secretly sold it without telling me, dividing the $350, $0, between herself and her family and hiding the proceeds. She'd lied about everything, saying she wanted to fix things, but instead she was planning her escape, her affair, her new life. That's when I realized the full extent of her betrayal. It wasn't just the affair, it was the theft, the lies, the deception. All of it felt like a punch to the gut. I couldn't believe she'd do this to me, to our kids. I was starting to see that was not the woman I thought I knew. She was a manipulative, selfish bitch who'd do anything to get what she wanted. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't let her get away with this. Not just the cheating. She'd taken everything from me, and I was determined to make her pay. After I uncovered everything, her affair, the secret sale of the house, and the hidden money, I felt like I was walking around in a fog. My mind was racing, trying to process how someone I trusted so completely could turn into this manipulative, dishonest person. The betrayal cut deep, but what made it worse was the realization that she'd been planning her escape for quite some time. While I was working hard, paying the bills and trying to keep everything together, was secretly plotting her new life with Jake and dipping her fingers into our savings. I remember the moment vividly. I was sitting in our living room, staring at the screen of my laptop when I saw the bank statements. They showed the transfer of over $350, $0, from our joint account to an account I never knew existed. She had completely wiped us out. She told me she was investing in her business idea, but I found out she had sold the house, split the money with her family, and hid the proceeds in a different account. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. All those years we spent building that home, raising our kids there, and she just sold it without telling me. I wasn't sure whether to feel angry, betrayed, or just numb. I knew I had to confront her, but I also had to be smart. I didn't want to tip her off before I had all the evidence in place. So I played it cool for a few days. I started secretly gathering more proof, screenshots, bank statements, copies of texts. I even hired a private investigator to follow her when she went out. It was the only way to get concrete proof that would stand up in court or in a divorce proceeding. I needed to be sure I wasn't just overreacting or jumping to conclusions out of pain. Meanwhile, kept lying. She told me she was working late, going to yoga, hanging out with her friends, but I knew better. I'd caught her in too many small lies, and her phone kept ringing with calls from Jake. I saw the texts, the flirtatious messages, the "can't wait to see you tonight," and the explicit sex talk. It made my stomach turn. How could she be so reckless? And on top of that, she was still acting like everything was fine, like she was the innocent one. She'd smile at me, pretend to be the loving wife, but I knew the truth now. One night I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I sat her down, trying to stay calm, and asked her directly about the affair. She looked me dead in the eyes and lied, saying, "You're crazy, John. You're paranoid. I don't know what you're talking about. I love you, but you're just insecure." Her tone was bitchy, dismissive, like I was some kind of nuisance. That made me even angrier. How dare she call me paranoid? I had the proof right in front of me. I told her I knew about the affair, the sale of the house, and the money. Her face twisted into a sneer, and she started to get defensive. She spun a web of lies, said she was tired of the boring marriage, that I was neglectful, that she needed excitement. She claimed the affair was just sex, nothing serious. She tried to make me feel guilty, saying I was the one who pushed her away. But the truth was, I was done being manipulated. I felt crushed, but I also felt rage. I was starting to see her for what she really was, a selfish, manipulative woman who'd do anything to get what she wanted, even if it meant destroying her own family. The emotional toll was enormous. I'd loved her for so long, trusted her with everything. Now I saw her in a different light, someone who lied, cheated, stole from us, and still had the nerve to act like the victim. I was hurt, furious, and confused. I didn't know how to feel about her anymore. I just knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. I had to decide what my next move was. The betrayal was too deep, and I was starting to realize that our marriage was beyond saving. But I also knew I had to be strategic. If I wanted justice, I needed to play this carefully, gather all my evidence, and prepare for what was coming next. The more I thought about everything, the clearer it became that had been playing me for a fool for years. She'd lied about her whereabouts, hidden money, and had this whole double life going on. One where she was cheating on me and secretly cashing out on our shared life. It made me sick to my stomach just thinking about it. I kept replaying the moments I missed, the signs I ignored, and now I could see how every little thing was part of her plan to get away with it all. The worst part was realizing how deeply she'd betrayed me financially. The house was supposed to be our sanctuary, the place where our family grew, but she sold it without my knowledge or consent. I found out she'd done it through a sneaky real estate agent she'd hired behind my back. The sale was finalized months ago, and the proceeds were split. She took her share and her family took theirs. She told everyone she was downsizing, but the truth was she was fleeing. And she wanted to make sure I never got a penny of what was rightfully mine. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. I trusted her completely, working long hours trying to provide for us, and she was secretly planning her escape. I was furious at her lies, but I was also furious at myself for not seeing the signs sooner. How could I have been so stupid? I had to do something fast. I couldn't let her get away with this. I started planning my next moves carefully. I needed legal advice, I needed to document everything, and I needed to prepare for a fight over the house and the money she'd stolen. I contacted a lawyer and I told him everything about the sale, the hidden money, the affair, the texts, the lies. He told me I had a solid case for divorce and that I could also challenge the sale of the house, especially since she'd done it without my knowledge or consent. The lawyer warned me that might try to hide more assets, so I needed to be thorough. I spent the next few days gathering every piece of evidence I could find: bank statements, text messages, emails, Even some recordings I managed to secretly make. I wanted to be prepared for a legal battle I knew was coming. Meanwhile, was still acting like everything was normal. She'd come home, act sweet, act innocent. But I could see the guilt in her eyes when she thought I wasn't looking. She'd get defensive if I asked about the money or the house, and her stories kept changing. One minute she said she'd never sold the house, the next she admitted she'd done it to get out of the marriage, but claimed she'd done it legally and with the right intentions. I didn't buy it. I knew she was lying, covering her tracks, trying to spin her web even. One night I found her phone lying on the kitchen counter. I couldn't resist. I picked it up and started going through her messages. That's when I saw a chat with Jake, more explicit sex talk, plans to meet up again, and even a promise from her that she'd leave everything behind for him. That was the final straw. I felt my blood boil. How could she be so reckless, so selfish? I realized she didn't care about me, about the kids, or about our life. All she cared about was her own pleasure, her new life, her secret affairs, and her money. That night I sat in the dark, feeling numb and angry at the same time. I knew I couldn't keep pretending that everything was okay. It was over. The trust was shattered. I had to decide whether to fight for our marriage or walk away for good. I'd already lost so much faith in her, but I also knew I owed it to myself and the kids to do what was right. The betrayal had been a slow, painful unraveling, and now I was at the edge of a precipice. I had to choose whether to confront her again, go legal, or just cut my losses and start over. The truth was, I didn't know if I could forgive her, if I even wanted to try. All I knew was that my world had been turned upside down, and I was just trying to hold on to what little stability I had left. Over the next few days, everything moved so fast I could barely keep up. I met with my lawyer again, going over all the evidence I had collected, screenshots of her texts, bank statements showing the sale of the house, proof of the hidden money. The more I looked at it, the more I realized how calculated her moves had been. She planned her escape well in advance, and she was already trying to cover her tracks. I knew I had to act quickly if I wanted any chance of getting what was rightfully mine. The lawyer advised me to file for divorce immediately, to freeze any remaining assets she might try to hide, and to challenge the sale of the house. He warned me she'd likely fight dirty, that she'd lie, spin stories, and try to manipulate the court. But I was prepared. I felt a strange mix of relief and anger. Relief because I finally had a plan, and anger because I'd been so betrayed, so humiliated. I decided to confront her one last time before going all in on the legal route. I told her I knew everything, the affair, the sale, the money. Her face twisted into a sneer. She tried to deny it all, but I handed her the evidence. Her eyes widened when she saw the bank transfer, the texts, the proof of her lies. She started to scream, calling me paranoid, crazy, insecure. She yelled that I was controlling and that she deserved happiness too. But I was done listening to her lies. I told her she was done, that I was taking everything I could, and that she'd regret ever crossing me. The moment I dropped the bomb, she tried to spin it again, acting like she was the victim. She cried, said I was ruining her life and that I was the one who drove her to cheat. It was all bullshit. I saw through her tears and her crocodile smiles. I knew she was just trying to manipulate me, to guilt-trip me into backing down, but I wasn't falling for it anymore. I was done being a sucker for her lies. The court date was set. I filed for divorce, asked for full custody of the kids, and demanded an accounting of all the hidden assets. I knew she'd fight, but I had enough evidence to prove her deceit. Meanwhile, she was trying to spin her web even, calling friends and family, claiming I was abusive or controlling, that I was the one cheating, not her. It was classic blame everyone but herself, but I didn't care. I was focused on getting my life back, reclaiming what she'd stolen, and making her pay for the damage she'd done. The day of the court hearing was intense. I sat there, feeling like I was on trial myself. She showed up, looking bitchy and defiant, dressed to impress but with guilt behind her eyes. Her lawyer tried to argue that she was the innocent victim, that she needed emotional support, and that the sale of the house was a mistake. But I had everything laid out, proof of the sale, the bank transfers, her texts. I presented it all, and the judge listened carefully. When it was over, I felt a strange sense of relief mixed with dread. I knew the fight wasn't over yet, but I'd done everything I could to hold her accountable. In the aftermath, lies started to unravel even more. Friends and family began to see the truth, her manipulations, her lies about the sale, her affair. The court ordered her to pay back the money she'd stolen and to relinquish her claim to the house. I got custody of the kids and I started the process of rebuilding my life. It wasn't easy. There were nights I'd lie awake thinking about how blind I'd been, how much I'd loved her, only to find out she'd been lying all along. Looking back, I realize I learned a lot from this nightmare. Trust has to be earned, not given blindly. People can be incredibly good at hiding their true selves behind a mask. And when someone's willing to betray you this deeply, you have to fight for yourself, your kids, and your future. I don't regret standing up for what's right, even if it meant losing the woman I once loved. Sometimes, the only way to find peace is to confront the truth head-on, no matter how ugly it is. I'm still healing, but I know now that I'm stronger than I thought, and I won't let anyone take advantage of me again. After the court proceedings wrapped up, I felt like I was finally starting to breathe again, but the scars of everything did to me weren't so easily healed. Still, I had to move forward for myself and for my kids. The aftermath was messy, though. Didn't go down without a fight, she kept trying to spin stories, telling anyone who'd listen that I was the bad guy, that I was controlling and jealous. I knew better. I had the evidence and I knew the truth. But her lies still had a way of infecting the minds of friends and family. The biggest blow was realizing how much trust she'd broken, not just with me, but with everyone around us. I had to rebuild my reputation, and that meant being honest about what had happened without stooping to her level. I stayed quiet publicly, focusing instead on caring for my kids, working my job, and making sure I didn't let her chaos destroy me completely. But inside, I was angry, furious at how she'd used her charm, her lies, and her sexuality to manipulate everyone, including me. Financially, I was left to pick up the pieces. I managed to get back some of the money she'd stolen through the court order, but there were expenses, lawyer fees, moving costs, counseling for the kids. I had to tighten my belt, work extra hours, and make sacrifices I hadn't planned on. The house was gone, sold in her scheme, but I managed to find a smaller place. For me and the kids. It wasn't the same, but it was ours. I refused to let her win completely. The kids were the most important thing. They didn't fully understand everything, but I could see they were confused and hurt. I made sure to be honest with them in a way that was appropriate, telling them that sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, and that what mattered most was that we stayed a family, even if we had to do it differently now. I kept their routines as normal as possible, took them to therapy, and tried to give them as much love and stability as I could. It was hard, but I knew I had to be strong for their sake. As for she continued her manipulative tactics, trying to paint herself as the victim to anyone who would listen. She moved out of town, trying to start fresh, but I kept tabs on her through mutual friends and social media. I knew she hadn't changed. She was still the same selfish, lying woman I'd uncovered. I also learned that her new life wasn't as perfect as she pretended. I saw pictures of her crying, angry, and lashing out at everyone around her. The more she tried to pretend everything was fine, the more I saw her unraveling. I've come to realize that revenge isn't always about getting even. It's about justice, about making sure the truth comes out and that I don't get buried under her lies. I had to let go of the anger, but I also had to be vigilant. I don't trust her anymore, and I don't want to. I've learned to be cautious, to trust myself, and to value honesty above all else. I've also learned that sometimes people reveal their true colors when they think no one's watching. Looking back, I wish I could say I'm completely healed, but I'm not. I carry the scars, but I also carry a new sense of strength. I'm more cautious now, more aware that love and trust are precious and fragile. The betrayal taught me that I can survive the worst, that I can pick up the pieces and rebuild. And honestly, that's the biggest lesson. No one can take away your dignity unless you let them. I refuse to let lies define me. I'm moving on, stronger and more aware of what I need to protect myself and my family from in the future. Now, sitting here reflecting on everything that's happened, I realize how much I've learned the hard way. Trust is something you earn, not just give blindly, and betrayal cuts deeper than I ever thought possible. Actions, her affair, the sale of our home, the hidden money, showed me that people can be incredibly good at hiding who they really are. I used to believe in fairy tale endings, in the idea that marriage was forever. But I've come to see that sometimes, love isn't enough when someone is willing to lie, cheat, and steal from you. Losing that house, that dream home, was like losing a part of my identity. It hurt more than I can put into words. But what hurt even more was the realization that the woman I'd loved and trusted for so many years had been lying to me right under my nose. She manipulated everyone around her, including her own family, just to get what she wanted: money, freedom, a new life with Jake. And I was the one left to pick up the pieces, to figure out how to move on. The court battle was brutal. It stripped away some of her lies, but it also revealed a harsh truth. She was a selfish, manipulative person who'd do anything to serve her own interests. I won custody of the kids, got back some of the money she'd stolen, and managed to rebuild a life for myself. It wasn't easy. There were nights I felt overwhelmed, angry, and hopeless, but I kept going. For my kids, for myself. I learned that resilience isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up every single time you do. I'll admit part of me still feels the sting of betrayal. I wonder how I missed the signs, how I let her get away with so much for so long. But I also know I can't live in the past. I have to focus on the future now, on healing and moving forward. I've become more cautious, more aware that appearances can be deceiving, and that honesty is a rarity worth fighting for. I've learned to trust my instincts, to listen to that little voice telling me something's wrong. Looking back, I see that I've grown stronger because of all this. I've learned that revenge isn't about getting even, it's about justice, making sure the truth comes out and that I stay true to myself. I've also learned that sometimes the greatest act of strength is walking away from a toxic situation, even if it hurts. And that's what I did. I walked away from her lies, her manipulations, her betrayal. I took back control of my life, and I refused to let her or anyone else break me again. So here I am, a battered but wiser man, trying to rebuild what was lost and learning to trust again, carefully this time. I don't know what the future holds, but I know this: I've survived the worst and I'll keep surviving. The pain will fade, the scars will remain, but I'll be stronger for having faced it all. And if there's one thing I want everyone reading this to take away, it's this: trust is precious, and when it's broken, it's often better to walk away than to keep fighting a losing battle. Protect yourself, stay honest, and never let anyone steal your peace.